swim tips. Being a swimmer my whole life, I've learned though how to be a swimmer out of the pool and not in triathlon. So to start with, I'm a clear goggle wearer. Whether it's sunny or not out, I feel more in it when I'm in clear goggles. You can still see whether the sun's in there or not, but that just helps me focus. I've been known to put my goggles even on my forehead the last 100 yards just to really see the finishing chute. Of course, all these tips, by the way, work for me. They might not be best for everyone, but they do work for me. After I put my wetsuit or my Roka speed suit on going into the swim, I always am eating 100 to 200 calories as I'm walking to the swim start. And that really helps jump my sugar right away and get ready to go. I'm, of course, sipping water with that because you always have to have water to absorb all that nutrition you are taking. One of my third swim tip would definitely have to be a little different one is I do chew gum. I chew gum in the swim. I know it's a hazardous thing, but for me, and I've always been like this growing up, it helps so I don't swallow water. I spit my gum out one time in a very choppy race, and it hit me later because I was not feeling well. I was throwing up the entire bike, and I ended up that not being a good race for me. So I do chew gum in the swim. I'm not saying I recommend it for people to do. I'm just saying what works for me, and it helps me not swallow that water. In addition, what I have been practicing this year to not swallow water in choppy conditions is in T1 I chug 4 ounces of club soda. Once again, these are what we learned the last 15 years of racing, and that helps settle my stomach a little bit so that I'm not throwing up any sort of nutrition and such on the bike, because you may feel really great that first 20 miles, and then all of a sudden if you've been losing water, you won't feel so good by the time mile 50 or 60 comes around. So those are just 3 tips I've learned along the way that work for me personally. So on the bike, gosh, it's such a long way, right? It's the longest part. And some people ride with power and some people don't, and I respect either decision. The only time I actually do have power is on my bike, and it's not necessarily to check your watts. Perhaps for a full distance I do look at my watts because I want to make sure I'm not going too slow or too fast, if you will. But I use my power tab also to beep every 20 minutes so that I remember to eat and drink. That just reminds me. I also like knowing how much further I have to go so I can pace myself accordingly. But another thing that's really important for me on the bike, and I do recommend this for everyone, is to get yourself an X-Lab Torpedo. I personally have to have the straw right in my face the entire race so that I can easily drink without fidgeting around trying to grab a bottle from below. And all you have to do is refill the Torpedo. It's truly the best thing X-Lab could create. It's also very aero, and it's horizontal sitting on your bike, so you can't get any better than that. In addition, I'm big on Rudy Project has made these glasses for me if you don't choose to wear the visor. I have done both before, but like the goggles, like the clear goggles in the swim I spoke of, I need clear glasses on the ride. I just feel way more awake and alive. When my eyes are darkened, I tend to just zone out into La La Land. So Rudy makes these clear glasses that the shades, if you will, are clear, but they still protect the sun. So they're almost like sunglasses, they're just clear. So I really, really prefer those things. The run tips, constantly learning. From run tips, how to race in the cold, how to race in the heat. For me, it's always learning how to race in the heat. So a couple things. One, I've recently, in the past, I'd say year and a half, incorporated the trusty Red Bull into my running, especially regimen. We forget, sometimes we think of Red Bull or to not Red Bull. We think of it as, pulsing your heart, a little bit of caffeine, a lot of caffeine. But the thing of the matter is, it also has electrolytes in it and things that are good for you, especially when you're out there racing. So Red Bull is my go-to. I keep it all the time in my little baggie, which brings me to my baggie. I'm really into Ziploc baggies, preferably the ones with the actual zip. And here's what happens. Another tip in transition, what I've learned is you got to keep things simple in transition. That's number one. keep in transition on, especially on the bike to run, only what you need. Your running shoes, your sunglasses, typically your bib number, and a baggie, a trusty baggie, and it has my gels in it. It has my base electrolyte salt, which is crucial, especially in hot environments. And then it has a piece of gum, again, because when I switch out onto the run, I do put a piece of gum in, and that helps hydrate my mouth a little bit. My point is, for the base electrolyte salt, I'm not a salt-only person ever, but electrolytes I need, and every time I'm running to an aid station, so every mile, let's say, on a half distance, you're taking your little base salt, you lick your thumb, you throw it back on your thumb, it gets a little circle, a little dot of electrolyte salt. Right when you see the aid station, you lick your thumb and you grab your water or your Red Bull or whatever's on the course to make sure you're getting enough to absorb that electrolyte salt. And that has helped me learn to race in the heat a little bit more, especially this past year that I've been using it. And I'm still practicing and I'm still learning those couple things. But those would be my run tips. Keep it simple in transition. Make sure you have only what you need. And then I'm a big fan of Red Bull. If it's not on the course you're doing, I have it in my baggie in transition. In addition, you can use that baggie to put ice in and keep it in your core and make sure you're keeping your body cool the entire race, which is super helpful. So in transition, I'm big on my Ziploc baggie. In the baggie, I have to put the entire Red Bull in it, and that way I can translate it into my chest. It holds it, and then when I get to mile 1, I open the Red Bull. I'm able to get down a gel, and then I can carry on my way. So that's really important to me to have in the baggie, to be able to have it on the course. Keeping it simple in transition is also completely crucial. So those are my 2 big things. I'm still learning how to perfect transitions, absolutely. I've done almost 55 full iron distance races in my career. I don't know how many halves, but I'm telling you, it took me a good 30 full distance to really know nutrition. And I know everyone's different. What could work for one person doesn't work for another. But nutrition is it's the 4th part of triathlon. Is that okay? It's the 4th part of triathlon. And we have to we can't devalue the integrity of nutrition. So, for me, once again, we know everyone's different. Race morning, I always have the same thing. It's Vans waffles with Nutella and a banana. Keeping in mind, race week, I'm having 2 bananas a day. Got to get in that potassium. Have to happen, especially in hot races. Because I have a tendency to cramp, especially in hot and humid races. So that is always my race day, race morning meal. And then, like I said, on the way to the swim, I'm popping 200 calories of blocks or chomps, whatever everyone prefers. And then once we segue onto the bike, it's constantly, you have your electrolyte drink, you have water every aid station. In a half distance, I'm having 300 calories an hour usually. It's mostly in something more solid, like a block or a chomp. No caffeine on the bike. For me, that works for me, because at the tail end of the bike, that's when I start my gels. I go from blocks and chomps to gel, and that is super important. And then the caffeine starts, okay? The caffeine starts at the last mile of the bike and through the entire run. When I get to transition, my first mile, the Red Bull happens right away, within the first mile, 2 miles, and then gels the rest of the way with water to absorb all that nutrition that we've just eaten. That's crucial for me personally. So first of all, the hardest part, I think, in our sport, we're in a very, very emotional sport, is to getting to that start line happy, healthy, injury-free. That's the hardest part. And that's why I admire age groupers so much. They're managing, for me, I've made my hobby my job. They're managing everything outside of this hobby that they do. And that's pretty impressive to me. So the mental aspect, I always say to myself, the highs are high. The lows in our sport are so low. And you cannot let, which I've said before, success get to your head or failures get to your heart. That's the number one thing in our sport. You cannot dwell on what you can't control after the race is done. Once the race is done, once that bad web workout I call, why even bother? Why even bother? You're going to have tons of those workouts leading up to the holy grail of your sport, which is the races. And that's the first thing, you cannot dwell on the bad stuff. And so you have to learn to juggle the highs with the lows. So mantras are keys for all of us, and everyone has their own, which is what I love about this sport. I see so many great mantras. For me personally, I have that standard one that you guys all see everywhere. I say KCCO, so I write that on my hand, KCCO, which stands for keep calm, carry on. And it's such a simple word or mantra, but if you really think about it, keep calm, carry on. That's what we have to do. We have to sort of we have to be like a duck out there. I always say, be a duck. You're quacking like crazy, but you're smooth on the surface of the water, as smooth as you can be, even though you're pedaling frantically underneath the water. So that's number one. Number two is, I've done this for as long as I can remember, is, my husband I've been with since I'm 14. I'm almost 37. I write his initials on my right hand. Since I'm left-handed, it's clear, it's big. I can see it throughout the whole race. So when I start losing it a little bit, I can look down at that on my right hand, and then I write my niece and nephew, who are super obviously important in my life, as is my sister and brother-in-law. So I write them on my left hand, and that kind of just really picks me up in the dark pockets.